everybody. In this video, I kind of want to expand upon some of the notions that you learned from that previous video that you watched from Alex Lyon on YouTube where he talks about transitions. And give you some of my own advice because I really love what he says, but there's some other things I would think about too. Transitions are very, very, very important for your speech. In fact, when your speeches lack transitions, it's incredibly difficult for an audience to follow along. Think about teachers that you've had in the past that just go on and on and on with detail and don't really kind of connect or flow them all together. Or in fact, think about family members or friends or neighbors who are just incapable of telling a logical story, and it's just this mess of language that comes out of their mouths and you have no idea what actually happened and what you're supposed to learn. Right? Those teachers and those people in your life who are really bad at storytelling fail to use transitions. And I know this sounds self-explanatory, but honestly, transitions are the number one parts of a speech that students in a Speech 101 class often forget. I don't know why. They are very important, and you'll see when some of you give speeches and don't, connect the dots as expertly as other students, those speeches are going to be a little bit more difficult to follow along with than some of the other speeches. So I loved Alex Lyon's advice about transition statements, signposting statements, and then summary stuff. So we're going to kind of take that and expand a little bit about it, because what I want you to do when you're in the body of the speech is treat every single main point with the 4S method. S as in Sally. And what I want you to do is, when you're outlining your speech, in the margin, write 4S, and then identify each of these 4 S's that I'm about to give you, and make sure that each body paragraph or each body portion or each main point of your speech flows seamlessly through the 4S method. So the first thing that you want to do in the 4S method is state the idea. What part of the speech am I in? If my main points are problems, causes, solutions to a specific issue that we're facing, then when we get into main point 1, the first sentence of that main point should be something like, first, let's talk about the problems. The first sentence in main point 2 should be, but first, let's talk about the causes. So in this state the idea stage, your first of the 4 S's, you really want to tell your audience, where in the speech am I? What main point will we be listening to? The second thing you want to do in the body of each main point is to sign the idea. So yeah, we're going to talk about problems, but what are our problems? Every main point should have 2 subpoints in them. So you'll have a subpoint 1 and a subpoint 2 that both explain main point 1 or main point 2. So when you're signposting, what you're doing is you're telling your audience what the 2 things in this main point you're going to be talking about. So let's say our speech is about recycling and there's too much pollution. When we talk about our causes in main point 2, I might first state the idea by saying, but first, what causes pollution? Then to signpost the idea, I'm going to identify my 2 subpoints. And I'll do that by saying, well, there's actually 2 causes that enable pollution. First, people don't really know how to successfully recycle. And second, it's these factory farms, y'all. But first, let's talk about the confusion around really knowing how to recycle. So you want to make sure that you not only state the idea and tell the audience what part of the speech you're in, but you want to signpost your subpoints. So tell me the order of what you're going to be talking about is in each main point. Once you get through that, the third thing you should do at every main point is to support the idea. So what you want to do here is now this is where the meat is. This is where the nuts and bolts are. If we're talking about how people don't really understand how to recycle, then this is where you bring in your sources. This is where you tell your story. This is where you give your examples. If we're saying that factory farms as our second subpoint is enabling pollution, what are the factory farms doing? Where is your proof? Show me statistics. So this is like the big part of the main point. This is the what you're actually saying. So while state the idea and signposting the idea are the first two sentences of each main point, support the idea is basically the main point as a whole. And then the final thing you want to do in every main point of your speech is to summarize the idea. And that's your transition statement that connects from one main point to the next main point. And Alex Lyon did a really excellent job in this video. You really do want to just keep it simple and say something like, so now that we understand what's causing pollution, let's move on to our third and final point. How to solve it. And then you just restart. So when solving pollution, there's two things we need to think about. First, we need to make these standards of recycling easier. And second, we need to start boycotting factory farms. All right? So really, it just kind of all connects. What main point am I in? I'm stating the idea. What are the two things that I'm going to talk about in that main point? I'm signposting the idea. What am I actually doing to explain my thoughts? I'm supporting the idea. How do I end this main point and go on to the next one? I summarize the idea. Let's take this even one step further. I want you to think of the 4S method like a road trip. All right, let's say that we are getting in the car and we're driving to Florida to go to Disney World. My brother works in Disney World, so I go to Orlando all the time. I've never road tripped it yet though, because that's 16 hours from Chicago to Orlando. But let's say this year I'm road tripping to Florida. So I have to tell my audience that I'm going from state to state. So I'm starting in Illinois and I'm ending in Florida. And every time I get to a new state in my road trip, I'm going to announce that. Oh, now I'm in Tennessee. Now I'm in Georgia. So what state, what part of the map am I on? What part of the speech am I in? As you travel in your road trip, you have to follow all the exit signs on the road. So this is where our signposting comes in. Your signposting statements in your speech are going to act like those exit signs on the expressway. They tell you where you're going and what's coming next. You take the signs off the road, you have no idea how to drive or where to go. You remove the signposting statements from your speech, your audience can't follow along. But while I'm driving, I have to support all of my luggage, in my trunk, on my car. And also when I get to Florida, I've got to have my itinerary of what I'm going to do, what parks I'm going to go to, what shows I'm going to see, what rides I'm going to ride. So this is where we're really planning the trip. We're supporting our way and we're doing things in the journey. And then finally, when I get home, I'm going to hop onto all of my social media accounts and summarize my trip, right? I'm going to make a big long post about it on Facebook. I'm going to tweet all of the characters that I met. I'm probably going to do a little TikTok. What do you got to catch the woe, or I don't know how to do it. All the dances while I'm waiting in lines. I'm going to go to Instagram and post all of my pictures with descriptions on where I went. So I'm going to summarize my trip and tell my audience what I did, where I went, what parts of the vacation I enjoyed the most, blah, 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 blah. So if you think of the 4S method like a road trip, you just are traveling through your speech. You're going from the introduction to the conclusion, and you have to connect the dots along the way. What main point am I in? State the idea. What are the two subpoints that I'm going to communicate in that main point? Signpost the idea. What am I actually going to be talking about to explain those subpoints? Support the idea. And finally, how do I go from one main point to the next main point? I summarize or transition. So by following the 4S method, you will always hit your transitional statements. You will always use your connective language. Your audience will remain focused. They won't get distracted. They'll be able to follow along in your speech. It's a tried and sure way to make sure that everybody gets to their final destination in the quickest and easiest amount of time. You need to use transitions. They're going to be a huge part of your speech grade. So practice with them and identify them again in this final assignment that you'll have for this week. I hope you enjoyed all the videos and the readings. I know that you read a lot this week, a couple of chapters in your text, that big long PDF, but this is a lot of stuff that you need to know for the speech. I'm expecting you to use transitions. I'm expecting you to hook the audience at the start of your speech. I'm expecting you to be able to wrap the show up in conclusive statements. So please make sure that you do take this week seriously, read all of the things, because the last assignment that you're gonna have to do this week is to identify all of the elements of the speech. So you're gonna have to, show me the parts of the introduction. You're gonna have to show me where the support the idea comes in and the transitional language and stuff like that. So as always, if you have any other questions about transitions or intros and conclusions, just shoot me an email, and have fun creating the roadmaps of your speeches.